So, first up, what is Doctor Who Comics Day?
So Doctor Who Comics Day is sort of an international celebration of both Doctor Who and comics. It's kind of an excuse to get comic stores all over the world to throw small parties, get cosplayers in, generally just have fun with the brand and with the comics and the fact that there are Doctor Who fans all over the world and they really want to celebrate their passion, essentially. So you have conventions all over the place, but this is almost a more a localized form of that expression of fandom. So it's on Saturday, the 15th of August, people can go into their local comic book store, pick up the linchpin of the event, which is the first issue of our Doctor Who event series for 2015. 4 Doctors, written by Paul Cornell with art by Neil Edwards and colours by Avon Nunes. Fantastic. So they'll go in there, pick up that first issue, but they also get the chance to see what else is out there in the Doctor Who comics range. Comic store owners will be there to kind of guide them through the many titles that we got and sort of say this is a great jumping on point, try this out. But yeah, there'll be sort of activities, quizzes, all that kind of stuff. So it's just a great excuse for a party, and it's a way of also celebrating and thanking the retailers and readers who've been so supportive of us over basically our first year in printing Doctor Who comics.
So, what can you tell us about Paul Cornell's 4 Doctors?
Well, the first thing is Paul is very, very clear that the title is 4 Doctors, not The 4 Doctors, and there are actually 3 or 4 reasons throughout the series why that's the case. So I can't wait to see readers speculating about, who the 4 Doctors are, which is the 4th, because obviously it's the first ever crossover between Doctors 10, 11 and 12 in any medium. So that's really exciting. That's sort of what drew Paul to the project in the first place, the opportunity to tell that story of that meeting. And it's basically, it's a big summer blockbuster roller coaster of a story. Kind of there's not too much doom and gloom, though the stakes are universe shattering, but it's lots of the 3 Doctors bickering and generally facing down the end of the universe while still trying to one-up each other, and kind of you find that 10 is incredibly suspicious of 12 because he doesn't believe that he should actually exist. You know, from his perspective, this man should not be here. 11 is sort of relieved to find out that he does actually carry on going. So he's almost the peacemaker in between 10 and 12 while they're at each other's throats. 10 calls him famously an abomination to 12, and 12 is kind of like a Dalek word. Nice. So there's lots of that fun interplay, and it's basically an excuse to get all 3 of them together with our 3 comics companions. So obviously Clara's in there. We reflect sort of Series 8 continuity at this point. But we've got 2 brand new companions in our comics that are making them sort of really accessible to new readers. Even if you've not been reading the series so far, 4 Doctors is also a fantastic jumping on point. So you get everything you need to know in that number 1. If you haven't met our new companions before, they sort of introduce themselves to you through their actions in the story. And if you know anything about Doctor Who since 2005, you'll have an absolute blast with it. So it's a kind of infinite budget storytelling and just really big summer fun.
Fantastic, that sounds amazing.
It's also weekly as well, which is sort of experimental and not really something we've done before. So sort of through August and into September, it's just a big come back every Wednesday, enjoy the event.
Now, can you talk us through the range of covers for the series?
Yes, so variant covers are one of those unique quirks of the comics market. Basically, they're bonuses for both retailers and for readers. I mean, if you want to buy any particular comic and you've not seen it before, look for the number 1 and just buy the regular cover. The contents are always the same. The story, for me, is what's really important. The art on the covers, it's fantastic. We have some absolutely wonderful variant cover artists. There are sort of 2 kinds of flavors to variant covers. We have the regular ones that are available through any comic store, and those are basically ways of giving readers what they want. So lots of readers love photo covers, so we've got some of them here. So this is the photo cover for issue 1. We've got the War Doctor on here, and they're very, very popular for us as well. But we also have the opportunity to sort of play around with secondary characters. So we've also got a regular one, this is the companions, because you don't want the Doctors to have all the fun in this kind of event. So this is Gabby, Clara, and Alice, who are the companions in the series. So it's an opportunity to sort of give them a cover of their own and not relegate them to sort of secondary character stakes. And then the secondary tier is basically, again, with that sort of localized feel, the idea of having sort of a comic convention in your local store. Some stores, they have a huge Doctor Who fan base, or they want to sort of do a big event and a party, and they'll commission us to do a limited run cover that's just for that store. So there's things like the Doctor Who comic shop in the UK has done this War Doctor cover, and they'll be doing sort of a signing event for there. And then things like this one's Third Eye Comics in the States. And it's all the same contents, but it's something where if you go to that store, you can support that comic store. And supporting local comic stores is really important because they take big risks on new titles. They have the knowledge base that you might not find on, a big box store or something like that. So supporting them and getting out and having fun with them, they'll have big cosplay events, all that kind of stuff. So it's a way of anchoring those events. I mean, it's also ways of doing really fun art. I mean, this is the selfie variant that we've got the three Doctors taking, and it's things that you wouldn't necessarily put on the main covers, but there's a little more leeway on the variants where you can have a bit of fun and sort of the characters can let down their hair a little bit more. So, but yeah, the most important thing is inside those variants, the story is always the same. So if you're just looking for one, don't worry, so long as it's got event number 1 on the cover or something like that, you're getting the same story as everybody else. Aside from that, just follow your eye and your gut. If you really like a piece of artwork, go after that variant.
Fantastic. I think I'm going to get that Who shop.
Yeah, well, it's fantastic. I mean, that's by Mark Ellaby, wonderful artist.
So how does the storyline commissioning process work for Doctor Who comics?
Well, in many different ways. So, I mean, the simplest way is we will approach people that we think would be great to write for it and say, hey, do you want to write Doctor Who? And most of the time they will say, yes, please, I would like to do that very much so. Here's ideas I've been carrying around since I was a small child. And occasionally other people will just approach us and say, I've got some ideas, would you be interested for like a mini-series or can I pitch to you and that kind of thing. So it's a mixture of going out and tapping writers and creators that you think would be good and reading over ideas that people may send you and kind of being like, yes, okay, that would be fantastic, we can take that through. So it's very small icons that we give to these writers and it's kind of like, period, we'd like a new companion, go away, let your minds run wild. And then they'll fire ideas back at us, little paragraphs, and I'll sort of check them over and go, well, this one's fantastic, this one's a little bit like something that happened in 1977, so let's not do that. I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of Who, but it's definitely a muscle that works out on a regular basis when you're getting plots from writers, because it's that kind of, with all of time and space at your disposal, lots of things have still been done before, so it's kind of steering them away, or well, maybe we could fuse these 3 ideas together and come up with something entirely new. And then, when I'm happy, when we're happy, it goes down to the BBC in Cardiff and they sort of sign off and they have their own notes on it. Comes back, goes to script, goes to the artist, and eventually you end up with a finished comic. So it's quite involved, but it's a really interesting, fascinating process. And the BBC are wonderful in terms of giving us freedom and notes and stuff like that. So it's a really good working relationship there.
Brilliant. And if someone loves 4 Doctors, what's next for them to enjoy?
Well, there are 2 directions, both forward and back, which is appropriate for a Doctor Who franchise. So if the 4 Doctors is the first time you've ever read Doctor Who in comics, then I highly recommend you go back and pick up the first volumes of each of the 3 Doctor ongoings. So the 10th Doctor, 11th Doctor, or 12th Doctor, or pick one who's your favourite. They're all self-contained. You get everything you need to know in that first volume. As I say, like even if you've never read Doctor Who or even seen Doctor Who before, it will tell you what the Doctor is, what a TARDIS is, what a Sonic is, and sort of wind you up and let you go into those stories. So they all introduce the new companions, or they introduce the sort of new Series 8 status quo for the 12th Doctor. They're all self-contained volumes, but they begin a larger story. So volumes 1 through 3 of each of them, we're basically doing seasons, the length of years, about 15 issues long, 3 volumes collections, and they sort of tell a season arc. Check out those sort of first volumes if you haven't read them before. If you've been following along, then they all dovetail into 4 Doctors, and then very neatly, year 2 starts up again for the 10th Doctor and 11th Doctor, basically the next week. And then again, it's sort of like, just as you would come to like beginning of Series 10 or Series 9 or Series 6 or something like that, it will kick things off again in a new and sort of unexpected direction. So it'll still be, whoever survives the 4 Doctor event will still be involved in the ongoing series. But we've sort of shuffled some of the creative teams a little bit. Cy Spurrier is joining writer Rob Williams on the 11th Doctor series, so immediately there's a very different flavour there. So yeah, great jumping on points for those. So yeah, buy them monthly essentially. So the first time I went to San Diego was when we launched the Doctor Who conventions, the Doctor Who issues, that was last year. And we got so many people coming up to us saying, oh, never read a comic before. You'd think at a comic convention they would, but no, it's because they're broad multimedia things, it's TV, it's movies, it's action figures, it's video games. People would come by and go, oh, it's David Tennant again, oh, it's Matt Smith, it's my favourite Doctor, there's more stories, what?
Were you a Doctor Who fan before working on the range? And if so, what was your first experience of the show?
Yes, I was, but I was realising last night that I came to it about 6 or 7 different times as my first experience, so feel free to edit any of these. But yeah, because I grew up in the wilderness years, so it was already sort of off air by the time I was of an age to watch it. So my first memory is of the BBC must have done an anniversary rerun of a bunch of black and white serials, so they did one for each of the Doctors that they still had. And bizarrely, because again I was checking the name of the serial, they had the second Doctor series, The Mind Robber. and I was off school sick with chickenpox that week, watching it nightly, kind of hallucinating with chickenpox. And there's a bit in that series where Jamie, the Doctor's companion, is sort of hit by the mind rub or whatever, turns into a cardboard cutout, his face falls off, the Doctor reassembles his face but it's the wrong way, and another actor comes on and plays Jamie for the rest of the serial. And it's because he had chickenpox, which I didn't realise until I looked it up last night, which is such a weird collision.
But, it's a bit fun to watch when you're already hallucinating.
Yeah, I'm sure that twisted me awfully as a child. So, but then the rest of it is kind of, my local library was stocked with Target and New Adventures stories, and I was probably too young for the New Adventures and slightly too old for the Target, but I read all of them interchangeably. And there's some, I've still not gone back and watched like the Invasion of the Dinosaurs, because I'm sure the version I have in my head is sort of better than the one on TV. And then things like, I went nuts for the TV movie as well in '96. I was one of the kids who was clipping out the comics at the Radio Times and sticking them into a little book and that kind of thing. So that's clearly probably a formative experience for that.
And finally, do you have any favourites from the Titan range and Doctor Who comics from the past?
Well, yes. I mean, it's always hard picking favourites, especially when you're sort of directly involved in all of them. So I'm going to be very fair and cover all the series. But I think the issue ones or the first arcs that we did on the 10th and 11th Doctors are just fantastic. I mean, introducing things like Alice is introduced in the 11th Doctor series, dealing with grief over the death of her mother, and the Doctor basically is an explosion of colour that comes into her life and changes her completely because of that. But that arc that sets up over the first year is just really beautifully nuanced, and the fact that it starts in sort of black and white and then colour bleeds in through, it's just a really interesting way of starting it off. And similarly, the 10th Doctor arc, beginning with Gabby in Brooklyn, New York, sort of a first American companion, and just the way that he's almost introduced as he's like the shark from Jaws in the first episode, because we were looking over how Russell handles it on all of his sort of introductory companion episodes, and there's always that thing where the first one, the Doctor's almost not in it. He's sort of running parallel to the tracks of that companion, so we wanted to do that thing where the end of the first issue is almost the first time you see the Doctor with his sonic sort of out and brandished. So I think they were really successful in a way that we're going to capture the flavour of each of these eras. It won't be kind of the same Doctor Who, just with the serial numbers filed off and a different Doctor dropped in. It will be very reflective of the time and the look and the feel of each of the showrunners and that kind of thing. One of the others that I really love is we've got multiple issues through the 10th Doctor era where Gabby's sketchbook is actually part of the story. So the colorist Ariana Florian draws Gabby's sketchbook. She's sort of our ghost artist for that. So mixing her art in with pages from Elena Casagrande, who's the artist, sort of her handwriting in there, it gives you a totally new perspective on what it's like to travel with the Doctor, because you're seeing a character that we all know so intimately through a different set of eyes for the first time. So that sort of stranging effect, I suppose, of the Doctor was really important to us. The guys on the 11th Doctor series did some fantastic stylistic and structural stuff. Issue 6 is the issue that's told entirely backwards. So it starts on page 22 and then works back a page as it goes through. And the whole thing is the Doctor realises that it's going backwards and is travelling forwards as it's going backwards. So the fact that it worked at all is a miracle, but Rob Williams, the writer on that, and Cy Fraser, the artist, did great work. As well as the backwards issue, there's also a fantastic one in issue 11 where the TARDIS splits into 4 separate time zones. And they're each coloured C, M, Y, and K after the printing colours. So that was another one where it could have been, really self-indulgent, but Al Ewing, the writer on that one, and Boo Cook, the artist, really made it work with the characters, with the emotional beats, and it's really important to the actual story arc too. Another arc that I really love was actually the first one that we greenlit, the pitch, which is the Weeping Angels of Mons, which is the World War I story set in the trenches with the Weeping Angels. And that's by Robbie Morrison. It was sort of the first thing he brought to us, and it was just that one-line pitch. And we were like, yes, that sounds really good, let's do that. But it sort of, it delivered more than we thought it was going to. The art by Daniel Lindro and Slamit Mugiano is just gorgeous, deep, fantastic architecture, the character moments are beautiful, so that was really cool. So yeah, but there are favourites across the whole range. I mean, it's especially when you're doing things like the year arc, there are always bits that carry through and individual stories that are always important to the whole. And we're always focused on the emotions of the companions and the characters and the Doctor all together. In terms of past Doctor stories that I've really enjoyed, the key one for me, my big recommendation, is the 8th Doctor stories that Panini did in the Doctor Who magazine. Written by the great Scott Gray and Alan Barnes, and art by Martin Garrity and Mike Collins. And it's basically 4 books, it's collected in 4 books at the moment, but it ran for years during the time when, obviously, between the TV series, the TV movie in 1996 and the TV series coming back in 2005. And it's just bold, brave storytelling with sort of new companions, new vistas and new adventures, and sort of no no breaks at all, kind of just, but really wonderful character work. And that was one of the guiding lights for me actually during the pitch process. It was kind of, you know, that's something we wanted to shoot for, and I hope we've managed to capture some of that sort of freewheeling, well-constructed spirit that they had during that era. So those were some of my favourite comics from previous publishers.
Awesome, it's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Well, thank you for having me.